Here's something that confuses a lot of Christians today. Does the Bible actually require women to wear head coverings in church today? Because when you read 1 Corinthians chapter 11, that's exactly what it sounds like Paul is saying. Welcome to the channel, guys. My name's Jacob Rohr. I'm your host, and this is Bible Brews. Today we're looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2 through 16, and what Paul actually meant. Paul starts his message off with actually praising the Corinthians for keeping their traditions. Then he starts talking about headship. He says the head of man is God, and the head of a woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. He's talking about structure and order here. But Paul also says Christ submits to God. So is Jesus less valuable than the Father? Submission doesn't mean that someone is worth less. But this is kind of the confusing part. Paul says that men shouldn't cover their heads when they're praying, but women should. Then he goes on further to say if a woman doesn't cover her head, she should shave it. Why would Paul say that? See, in the church of Corinth of that day, it was a very sexual culture and worldly culture, and they had different ways of living and acting than they do today. If you were a woman and you covered your head, that meant that you were married and sanctified at the time. And then if you were uncovering your head, that meant that you were sexually available or single, if you would in today's terms. And a shaved head actually meant that you were an adulterer or a prostitute. It was a very shameful thing to shave your head during that culture of that time. See, your appearance sent a message to other people, allowing them to understand what you were going through at that time. See, when women started going to church, they began to learn that there is neither male nor female, for you are all in Christ. So they started to think to themselves, well, social differences don't matter anymore, so I don't need to wear this covering in church. So they removed it during worship. And this kind of confused some of the men in the culture of that day. The problem was in Corinth, this didn't mean freedom in Christ. It meant sexual independence when you uncovered your head. So now Christian women in church look exactly like the prostitutes out on the street during the culture of that day. And that really hurt the church's credibility to outsiders, maybe wanting to go into church, but didn't really understand why these women were uncovered or their heads were shaven. Paul addresses this issue in Corinthians by saying, don't use your freedom in Christ that way. He says, this actually dishonors your spouse and confuses the watching world. This is because removing your covering actually meant rejecting authority of that day. So why is Paul talking about hair in the first place? He talks about long hair and then he talks about short hair. Well, this is because gender differences matter in creation. See, God created man in his own image, and then he created woman after man. Not to say that the two were less, but the two depended on each other. And worship shouldn't erase those differences. So his principles still apply to today, but the head covering was a cultural thing. So Paul isn't telling us that, hey, you should wear hats or you shouldn't wear hats in church service. He's saying don't live in a way that publicly dishonors God's design just in the name of freedom. Hey, hopefully this made this passage a little bit easier to understand. I hope you guys got something out of it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. This is Jacob with Bible Brews. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. All right, we will see you guys next time on Bible Brews. See you later.